We define ourselves through our history, culture, and food, but we so rarely think to stop and ask, how does it all work? Revealed examines the hows and whys while pulling the curtain back on the things you never thought to ask. On this episode, we explore elevators, the incredible vertical transporters that forever changed the way we navigate our modern world. From bustling cities to quiet suburbs, every day millions entrust their safety and convenience to a remarkable invention.
Elevators.
I'm always happy to talk about elevators, never a problem.
It's more than a box on a string. There's a lot of intricacies and complexities to elevators.
It's immediately recognized as this incredibly amazing thing. There's this device that carries me up and down in the building.
They were a marvel of engineering that has lifted us higher and higher, changing the very way we work and live.
It's something that people interact with. If you live in a city, you interact with it every day. But even if you don't live in a city, you're aware of them. People realize that's how you move in a vertical transportation in a building.
From the early days of manually operated lifts to the advanced automated systems of today, elevators have undergone a remarkable transformation.
This is the machine that was removed as part of the modernization. And now with Gen 2, we have a much more compact machine.
Every day, millions step into these mechanical wonders, trusting them to be safe, swift, and reliable. But behind each smooth ride is a century of innovation, daring designs, and engineering. As more and more people move into cities and buildings begin to grow, more change will come for the elevator, even at some of the world's most iconic and ambitious buildings. The year was 1854, and elevator pioneer Elijah Graves Otis stood on an elevated platform at the first American World Fair in New York City's Bryant Park. Once above the crowd, he slashed the rope, proving to the audience his invention worked.
Otis himself wasn't that much of a showman, so in order to build interest in his invention, he partnered with P.T. Barnum, who is the classic showman, and together they're the ones that created the demonstration that was done at the Crystal Palace.
3, 2, 1.
People would gasp when the rope was cut, thinking that it wouldn't stop. He had this catchphrase, every time it stopped, he'd say, "All safe, gentlemen, all safe." What you see here is a demonstrator of the original unit that Elijah Graves Otis used at the Crystal Palace. This was created to celebrate Otis's 150th anniversary.
Elijah Otis is widely considered to be one of the fathers of the modern elevator. His company was founded in Yonkers, New York in 1853 and eventually moved to Connecticut.
The idea of the safety brake started in 1852, where Otis worked in a factory where they were hoisting goods. When the rope broke, the goods fell to the ground, and he thought there must be a better way to handle this. So the real fundamental concept here is this leaf spring. The idea came from looking at carriages at the time. This was the suspension for the carriages. So what happens is when there's tension on the rope, it lifts up this spring and through this mechanism pulls these away from this notch rail.
It was this invention of an elevator brake that pushed the industry forward. Elevators aren't just a convenience, they are a necessity. Without them, the vertical sprawl of the modern metropolises would not be possible. But while they may seem like a modern invention, their origins are actually quite ancient in design.
The earliest history of elevators, of course, dates back to the ancient world, ancient Greece, ancient Rome, and we're talking about, human-powered lifts. Pulleys and other basic mechanical systems were used to carry goods up and down.
Ancient Egyptians used primitive elevator-like devices to lift heavy objects such as stones to construct the pyramids. Medieval castles in Europe had rudimentary elevators powered by human or animal labor. The Romans used them for more barbaric endeavors.
Of course, the most famous ancient elevators were those employed in the Colosseum, which were used to carry animals and other objects up and down into the Colosseum itself for the games.
But before humans would travel upward, a more practical use introduced some of the first modern elevators.
There was a need for devices in the factories, because they were multi-story buildings, to carry goods between the various floors to help with the manufacturing process. Initially, those were man-powered hoists with a counterweight where one person, because of the size of the pulleys, could literally raise 1 to 2 tons up and down by themselves.
Flash forward a few centuries, and the Industrial Revolution gave rise to cities with buildings inching higher and higher. Though simple, these contraptions laid the groundwork for a technological evolution that would forever change the face of cities worldwide.
By the time we get to the late 1850s, there was a gradual realization we could apply this to carry passengers, and this coincided with the rise of what we now think of as the grand urban hotel. In those hotels as decidedly a luxury item as part of that wonderful experience of staying in that grand building. One of the first passenger elevators that we know about was installed in the Fifth Avenue Hotel in New York City. The inventor, Otis Tufts, a Boston inventor, was very concerned about elevator safety and very concerned about cables breaking. So he removed the cables, installed this massive, what we would think of as a vertical screw that extended from the basement all the way to the top of the building, and attached the car to the screw in the same way that you would attach a nut to a screw, so that when the screw turned, the car rose and fell in the building. It's also perceived very much as this sort of luxury amenity. It begins to be used in other large hotels, but also used in very, very fine department stores.
They were tourist attractions. People would come from all over to ride them, but they didn't move so fast.
By today's standards, glacially slow. The earliest elevators in hotels, department stores, would have been approximately around 100 feet per minute, which is very, very slow. A modern high-speed elevator can easily go faster than 1,000 feet per minute.
It was these leaps in technology that gave birth to the modern metropolis. In the 2 decades before the turn of the century, cities in the US grew by 15 million people.
This opened up the door for using elevators for passenger travel, because now it was safe in case of this failure of the rope. What that did is it really flipped buildings around. Originally, buildings, the lowest floors were the most desirable, because the higher floors you had to walk up to these floors. Once the elevator came about, the higher floors became more desirable.
Cities were exploding at the seams and started growing taller. By 1930, 2 buildings in New York City would vie for title of the tallest building in the world. The Empire State Building overtook the Chrysler Building, standing at 1,250 feet tall when it was completed in 1931, just a year after construction began.
Nobody had ever done it before, right? The Empire State Building was the tallest building in the world for decades. The story of the elevators made the construction and occupancy of a 102-story building possible, right? You can't have that without elevators.
It was Otis that provided the elevators for that building.
So this was obviously the largest building going up in the world. So this was the biggest undertaking Otis had ever taken on. It was immense in that capacity, not just with size of building, number of elevators, but number of mechanics, up to 300 elevator constructors on site at any given time. So they were extremely advanced for not only the size of this building, they were designed to be the fastest in the world at the time, which would have been 1,200 feet per minute. City regulations at the time only had it at 700 foot per minute, but about a month later, they allowed the elevators to reach their full capacity, which were the fastest at the time.
When opened, the building housed 61 elevators, more than any building in the world. At the building, elevator operators worked to bring passengers to their floors. But if you were able to take a trip to the observation deck, you'd get a more manual experience.
These are your brains of your elevator. This is known as the controller. And when the car receives a signal, and the elevator operator at the time would place the car to go, you would hear these relays start picking up and dropping, providing that electrical current to go to the machine and to communicate with the car. As those controls start to pick up, you'll see this handle. So the handle was just simply put down to deactivate the car to go.
The invention of the elevator allowed cities to grow. By the mid-1900s, there were elevators in most tall buildings, but these were all mostly manually operated. Think Shirley MacLaine's quirky elevator operator in The Apartment.
The caregiver Morning, Miss
Good
Kubelik.
morning, Mr. Baxter.
Why, Miss Kubelik?
That's all. Take it away.
Watch the door, please. Blasting off.
There are no computers or machines driving this. It's all driven by the human brain. Each tall building employed an individual known as a starter. They were in charge of the elevator operators. The starters located on the ground floor, typically placed where they can see all of the elevators and signal the elevator operators.
Elevators operated the usual 9 to 5, so if an overachiever wanted to get ahead, they needed to take the stairs.
And there are articles about businessmen complaining bitterly about the fact that the elevators were not operating at 9 o'clock at night when I went back to my office to do some work.
Manual elevators have since gone out of fashion, but a few still exist. In 2017, New York Times reporter Andy Newman took it upon himself to map out 53 of them, including the 3 two-passenger elevators and a freight elevator at 47 Plaza Street West in Brooklyn.
This is an original elevator cab when the building was first built in 1928. The building itself, we have no hallways. You come out of the elevator and it's a very small vestibule, you step right into your apartment. This particular elevator here has a secret door that is for our penthouse. When you go to the penthouse level, the door, you have a doorway to go into the penthouse. You don't see too many of these. I don't know if you have any at all like this in New York City. We have manual controls, manual enunciators for when somebody rings, and just the hand controls for the elevator to have it go up and down.
Navin and Felix serve the 41 apartments in this pre-war Brooklyn icon.
You know, once you greet someone coming in, a visitor that's never been at the building, you know, you say, welcome. They come in, you walk with them to the elevator. They're not expecting you to be in the elevator with them. They're like, oh, you're coming with me. Yeah, I have to drive you upstairs. We don't have a 13th floor.
You don't?
We go 12 right there. We just skipped it right now.
Really? What is that like to have a 13th floor?
That is, it's different. I didn't know that 13 was a bad luck floor until I arrived at this building. And 14th floor is the 13th floor, so you know what, let's not tell them.
You feel like you're walking into a part of old New York, of its history. Everyone sort of becomes almost part of a family here. Every day, whether you're going up at the elevator or coming down, you're speaking to who's ever operating that elevator, and you're having a conversation. It could be about the weather. It could be about their family. It could be about a child who was just born. You develop a rapport with the operators, and you feel good about them and they feel good about you, and you look forward to seeing them.
There's a romantic, there's a Gilded Age kind of look about it, you know, and so I'm very proud of it, and I'm just proud of the building. I feel like it's my own. I feel like it's my own, absolutely.
This is my 20th year here. Started when I was 19, 39, so it's great. It's great being here. You don't stay at a place for 20 years if you don't love it.
These days, elevator operators are a rare find. Most elevators are automated. Just type in the floor you want and you're off. In fact, it was the elevator operators themselves that caused elevators to modernize after World War II. 15,000 workers went on strike, causing the city to come to a standstill. The strikes led to the automation of elevators by prompting manufacturers like Otis to add safety features, such as emergency phones and stop buttons, eventually eliminating the need for operators. Elevators continued to modernize through the 20th century, including the ones at the Empire State Building, one of Otis's original clients.
The Empire State Building elevator modernization is the largest elevator modernization in the world. Part of that is because our building is so tall. The elevator modernization, like many of the modernizations that we've done in that building, were looked at from several different lenses. So number one is the occupant and tenant experience, having them move faster. Number two is the sustainability, the performance of the elevators in this case. They're far more efficient.
When Otis rehabbed the elevators in the Empire State Building, they installed their regen drive technology. Put simply, excess electrical power is generated when an elevator with a light load travels up. The regen technology returns that energy to the building instead of wasting it. The modernization was one of the largest projects Otis took on, retrofitting all 73 elevators in the building.
All right, so this is our new elevator machine that we replaced the originals in 2011. So this is what controls the movement of the elevator. It's about to take off and go up. Right here, you can see your steel cables that move the elevator or have the car and the counterweight attached to them. And as we're going, the car is going up at this time, the counterweight's going down. And while that's happening, that's where we talk about the regenerative drive technology, where we are actually saving energy with this machine and this drive and putting it back into the building due to that counterweight moving the elevator, not so much the machine using its energy to do that. You can see our elevator monitoring system, our EMS. So our mechanics, while they're in the machine room, can monitor the traffic of the elevator. And our latest and greatest technology on our phone, I can look up every elevator in the machine room and see the current status, how it's running, and any preventative maintenance we might need to catch before an issue happens.
The mast elevator uses technology that eliminates the need for a machine room, carrying visitors to the newly renovated 102nd floor observatory, providing 365-degree views of the city.
This is the modernized elevator we did back in 2017. As you can see, it's completely changed. It's an entire glass elevator cab that you can see the entire hoistway and some of the elevator equipment. So traditionally you would have elevator ropes. Now we have coated steel belts, which allows us to save space, create a smaller machine, and save energy in the process going back to the building.
As more and more people move into cities and buildings begin to grow, more change will come for the elevator.
We always say, logically so perhaps, the elevator made the skyscraper possible. But without a desire to build the skyscraper, I wouldn't have the modern elevator. It's this constant dialogue back and forth. What the technology does, how far can I push it, and then, well, now I want to do something else, and we get new technology.
What do I see in the future? I see the elevator system connecting with other building systems and other sources of data. And again, the whole goal here is to help people as efficiently as possible get to where they want to be. So whether it's the move to air taxis and the interaction of those with elevators so that when the taxi lands, the elevator's there waiting for the person, or whether it's looking at data relative to loads in subways and making sure that we've dispatched the elevators for the incoming traffic, that's probably where it's going to go.
The next phase of elevator technology is going to be really interesting, and it's actually something that the industry has worked on for over 100 years, and that is, can I have an elevator without ropes? Because if I don't have the ropes, then there's no height limitation. And then the other sort of holy grail, perhaps, of the elevator industry is, can I also have that same elevator not only go up and down, but go side to side? For science fiction fans, especially of 1960s science fiction, you've already seen that on the Starship Enterprise.
It wants terror, not just death.
What I find interesting about that desire is going up and down makes perfect sense in buildings as they are currently designed. Going side to side, I struggle with why we would need to do that, given how we think about buildings. What's missing from that is we would need a new paradigm for the design of buildings to really justify, I could take an elevator up 50 floors and then across 250 feet.
Since the birth of the elevator more than 100 years ago, it has existed as part of everyday life, often not thought about.
When it's first introduced, the very first reaction was, this is great, everyone's going to have one in their home. Of course, that didn't happen, but it was perceived as this, no longer am I walking up 3 flights of stairs in a townhouse or something like that. But very, very quickly, especially when the elevator's introduced into office buildings, you have critics saying, the world is coming to an end. We have a generation of incredibly lazy people who refuse to walk upstairs. They have to ride in these machines. So most of it was positive, but some of it was, what are we doing to ourselves?
We often don't give much thought about how we move around the world. It's a sometimes passive experience. On average, Americans will travel 2.55 billion miles a year by elevators and escalators combined, and every 3 days, elevators will carry the equivalent of the world's population.
It's this weird, tiny little room that carries you up and down in buildings. But also, that weird, tiny little room has a profound cultural presence. There are songs about elevators. It's in poems, it's in children's books, it's in adult fictions, it's in movies, it's in television programs. You know, it's that cultural presence that also makes it fascinating to me. And while not everyone has an elevator story, most people do. There's this sort of mysterious nature to it because people walk up, these doors slide open, they get in, the doors slide closed, and they disappear. It's the closest thing to magic that I know of.